Welcome to Three Food Memories. I'm Sava Savas. My guest on this episode of Three Food Memories is a master of precision. A former aerospace engineer turned croissant queen, she swapped the roar of the Formula One engines for the quiet hum of a bakery oven. But beneath the layers of perfection and pastry lies a story of obsession, reinvention, and a creator's relentless pursuit of beauty. And while she's perfected the croissant to the moon and back, she's also been brave enough to confront the human cost of learning that being enough is enough. Ms. Lune, Kate REID, welcome to Three Food Memories.
Gosh, thank you so much for having me, and what an introduction.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I have to give you one small insight. The bakery oven is not a quiet hum. It hits some like high treble like a leaf blower. It's quite loud. It's so maybe more equivalent to an F1 engine.
So the sounds are familiar to you?
Well, I think it's a loud, busy, hectic environment, especially the speed at which we bake and sell the croissants. You're always on the go, so it's definitely not relaxing.
Congratulations on your new book, Destination Moon, a memoir of fast cars, French pastries, and finding purpose.
Thank you.
We're going to get into the book in a second, but let's talk about the pronunciation of the croissant, the croissant, the croissant.
Oh, I think you nailed it first time.
How do you pronounce it?
Well, I mean, it's tomato, a little bit in Australia. I think the traditional French pronunciation would be croissant, but in Australia it's very common to say croissant, and I'm not one to judge someone for coming in and ordering a croissant. As long as they've chosen Lune, I'm happy with that. So as long as they say Lune and not Luna.
So explain the difference between the two words for you.
Lune is the French word for moon, and Luna is the Italian word for moon, and Lune is the name of the business. But many people call us Luna, and that really grates me.
So do you have more of a French kind of classical sway?
Well, it seems natural. I mean, croissants are a French product, so of course the business is going to be known by a French name.
Destination Moon, what made you write it?
Oh, that's a big question. Many publishers have been approaching me since about 2016 to write a memoir about my life. And I mean, we're in 2025 now, so this is going back nearly a decade. And in 2016, I absolutely didn't feel like I'd lived a life yet that was worthy of writing a memoir. And I certainly didn't have the time to dedicate writing such a piece when I was working, 60 to 70 hours in the bakery weekly. So in 2021, Zoe Foster Blake approached me and she gave me a call. We're friends. And she said, "Oh, Kate, I was wondering if anyone's ever talked to you before about writing a fictionalized novel about your life." It's not exactly the type of call you expect to come through. And just as you did, I laughed when she said that. And she said, "Great, by your laugh, I'm assuming that's a no, so I want to be the one to do it." So Zoe and I embarked on several days. She flew me up to Sydney and we did long form interview that was a deep dive into my life and understanding the different characters that I've met along the way and the different experiences that I've had. So when she felt like she had all the information she needed, she said, "Okay, I'm going to go off and write the book. I'll call you when I've got a first draft." And about a year later, she called me and said, "I've been staring at a blank screen for a year." And she said, "I just don't even know how to start writing your story. I'm not an expert in Formula One, anorexia, or croissants. And I think you're probably the only person on the planet that is the unique expert in all three. I think you have to write your own book." I mean, that's a terrifying prospect, having an award-winning, beloved author say to you that you've got to write the book. It was too hard for her to write it. How am I supposed to write it?
Well, three very different topics, aren't they?
Very different, very.
And how do you bring them together like a coaxial cable?
Yeah.
And plug it in?
Oh, I appreciate that analogy. Yeah. And also, how do you do each of them justice where they're such big topics in and of themselves in one book? Anyway, I kind of put the project aside thinking, I'm not sure I'm capable of doing this. But then in April 2023, I was on a flight from Sydney back to Melbourne, my hometown. And all of a sudden I had this desire to write about the time that my dad and I went to the Monaco Grand Prix together for the first time. Kind of a short story.
Where did the desire come from? Where did the got to do this?
I've got no idea.
Right.
I think maybe other writers might describe this, that a book is ready to be written when it's ready. And it's not a moment that you can decide or define or control. I think you just need to be in the moment that it's right. And this chapter just flew out of me, and it felt so good writing it. And for me, that was the signal that maybe it was that I was ready to start writing my own book. So I embarked on a 1-month trip to Italy, taking myself out of all the distraction in my life.
You looked at the Luna?
Exactly. You're cheeky. I did, but I wanted to take myself to a country that I loved and have this idea of writing all day and then finishing each evening with a bowl of pasta and a glass of wine, and doing it in a beautiful place with no distraction. And from there, I think I did write the book chronologically then. I went back to the beginning from childhood, and over 2 trips to Italy, I wrote the story of my life.
Now, was there headspace to think about your life? Did you give yourself the permission?
I think I acknowledged that if I'd tried to write the book, in the midst of the chaos of normal life, so the running of Lune and the business and even just all my other extracurricular things that go on in life, I would never have had that headspace. And that's the reason that I decided to go off to Italy and give myself the physical headspace. But I think you're more referring to maybe a mental or an emotional headspace. I think that first chapter that I wrote about Monaco was me acknowledging that I had the emotional headspace and I was ready to do it. And rather than giving it to myself or feeling like I needed it, it felt like such a joy that finally I was in this time of my life where I was ready to be reflective and go through this almost cathartic process of recounting my life and pulling it apart and trying to understand it and maybe why I've ended up the person that I am now.
When I think of Lune, especially the research that I've done on Lune in the last couple of weeks.
Have you had a Lune croissant?
I have. Okay. And I have queued up, so I know what goes into the experience. But for me personally, Lune is more than a pastry shop. There's so many, here we go, literal layers. It's like a Sara Lee. What do they call them? Layer upon layer upon layer.
Oh, is it the Viennetta? I love the Viennetta. Yes.
So the last part of the book is titled, in the byline, the last part of it is the words "finding purpose." From what I see, the last 43 years of your life, you've lived a chockers full, purposeful life. Would you say the finding purpose in the byline was finding Lune?
No. That's a very short answer. It's a beautiful question, actually, and no one's ever quite worded it to me like that. I think for me...
So Lune is not your purpose?
Lune is part of my purpose, absolutely, but Lune isn't the end destination. Actually, when I was going through this is something that I haven't revealed before.
Here it is.
Yeah, here it is. When I was going through the process of publishing the book, I decided I wanted to write the whole manuscript without a deal with a publisher because I didn't want anyone to tell me what I should be writing or how I should write it. Yeah. But then once it was written, it went to a bidding war with 6 publishers.
Wow.
And one of the publishers that was interested said that they thought the book should have the title changed to Destination Lune. That's a very, very different title and a very different meaning to Destination Moon, even though they're essentially the same word. I think Destination Lune suggests that my purpose of my entire life is Lune, and that's what I'd been searching for. But I think Destination Moon speaks to a far more whimsical, romantic, I'm probably never going to go to the moon in my lifetime. And for me, the moon maybe represents perfection, which is that ultimate goal that I will never actually reach, but it's always there for me to aim for. And Lune has been in that journey to reaching for the moon, and it's still considered to be my purpose now for myself. But I think knowing the experience that I went through with Formula One and the disillusionment of that dream, and then realizing that I could overcome very large obstacles to find a new reason and purpose for being, suggests to me that I could probably reinvent myself again and again and again if I had to. So Right now, and for the last 13 years, Lune has been a big part of my purpose, but it doesn't define me wholly. And I think it's dangerous to define yourself wholly by one singular thing.
So for those who've been hiding out on Neptune, what is Lune?
What is Lune? So Lune started out as a tiny little hole-in-the-wall bakery in a bayside suburb of Melbourne, and I was supplying croissants to some of Melbourne's best espresso bars. That's how I got my foot in the door with, I guess, building a customership and a brand and a loyal following. 18 months after I started the business, I asked my brother to join me in it and help me convert the little bakery from a wholesale bakery to a customer-facing retail bakery. And since, when would that have been? The beginning of 2014. Since 2014, Cam and I have grown the business, what is that, 11 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
We've grown the business together. We now have 7 stores, 3 in Melbourne, 2 in Sydney, 2 in Brisbane, and we specialise uniquely in croissants and pastries that are made from croissant pastry.
I'm fascinated to know about the Lune customer.
So am I, actually. What can we learn?
Their dedication kind of lines up to yours, doesn't it? In the fact that they can queue up for hours. Sometimes, like, it takes up their whole morning. Who are they? What type of person is the Lune customer, do you think?
Can I just acknowledge that beautiful sentiment that you said their dedication lines up to mine?
Yeah.
I've never thought about that before, and you're absolutely right.
Because they're buying more than pastry. Like, you can go anywhere and not buy the same quality. Let's just be clear, but you can buy anywhere and have butter, flour and that. But they're coming to your shops. They're choosing to queue up. They're giving up part of their precious time.
Yep.
They're parting with they're acknowledging the amount of work that goes into this single handmade product. Who are they?
I think you summed it up earlier when you were talking about the fact that Lune isn't just a croissant, and you were speaking about the layers of the business. We have really, with Lune, used the business as a platform to celebrate the croissant as an experience. And we've tried to elevate the experience rather than just walking into your local bakery and buying it takeaway and doing whatever. You walk into a Lune space and we've thought about the architecture and the interior design.
Excuse me. Let me start that again. The way you enter the store, just that lovely, really calm Zen experience, getting it and then seeing the croissants.
Well, we think about that as well.
Yeah.
When we're designing the stores with our architects, we think about the customer journey. We think about the journey of our staff members and the way they need to use the space. And we think about the journey of the croissant from its, initial, the dough being made through to it being pulled out of the oven 3 days later. And I mean, someone once said to me, architecture is about function and form. And when we design a Lune space, we really think about function. And this is quite an engineering thing to do. We think about function, like the experience of a customer, the pastry and the staff member. But when you design a space that has those things in focus, how do we make these the best for the product, the customer and the staff? You end up with beautiful form because you see people engaging in a space in a way that was really thoughtful and meant for them. I think also that counter that we've designed, I think very early on it was designed as the Apple store of the bakery world. We were the first ones ever to lay out our menu, the real pastries in front of the customer as they line up. And I think it's a visceral experience, like walking up and being able to visualize exactly what you're going to get before you order.
There are photos that you've taken with your reflection in a piece of glass or something on all over your social media, and there you are quite proudly standing or looking on to your customers, because they're yours, walking into the experience, and there you are. It's like you're watching theatre.
It's so magical.
Yeah.
Actually, many people describe, especially our production stores, which are in Fitzroy in Melbourne, Rosebery in Sydney, and South Brisbane in Brisbane. It really is like watching theatre, and it's not just the customer, but being able to observe the pastries being made in front of you. It's like watching a choreographed ballet, but I think people get to appreciate all the effort and attention that is being put into a croissant.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first started Lune, a guy came up to me. I was doing a delivery to a cafe in Melbourne to drop off the pastries. And he came up to me and he said, "Oh, so do you just get up in the morning and whip up a batch of croissants?"
Sure.
It's funny, like, until that moment, I love that. Sure. I should have said that to him. Where were you? But until that moment, I hadn't really cottoned on to the fact that nobody had any idea how much work goes into making what is looked at on as a very humble breakfast pastry from France. So us bringing that forward and making it theatre, I think now when someone comes to a Lune, and actually a very famous French pastry chef came a couple of years ago. He was going to be a host, I think, on Dessert Masters, which is the spin-off of MasterChef. And he asked to meet me, and he said, thank you so much for bringing to the public what it takes to make a croissant, and also putting a price point reflective of the incredible amount of work that goes into it.
The humanity in it.
Well,
yeah.
I know, I'm not sure if I mentioned this as one of my food memories, but I had a long obsession with muffins, especially during the darker phases of my life. But you walk into a cafe and a muffin is often priced at the same as a croissant. And the ingredient cost isn't that much different, but a muffin does take 15 minutes to make and a croissant takes 3 days to make. So why are they priced the same? It's really that, it's the public perception of a baked good is a baked good.
Yeah.
But a croissant is not just a baked good. And Lune celebrates that. And I think that maybe, sorry to interrupt you, I think that might be what you were getting to. Like with Lune, we celebrate everything that a croissant is, and we really try to elevate that experience and highlight the intricacy of the nature.
I don't think you try, I think you've done it, because when I watch you experience in photos, when I watch you experience a Lune, a customer having a Lune experience, it's like you're like a director. Directors shouldn't be there on opening night. They hardly ever are on opening nights of plays. And they just sit back and let it play out. And it's so beautiful watching you. It's their reflections. There's several photos. I'm going to send them to you.
Yeah, I love this.
Of you just standing there with your head just on the side and just on looking and observing. And there's that lovely quiet appreciation. And I'm there celebrating that with you. And I was like, I want to be like her.
Well, I actually, so when I'm in Melbourne, I go to the city store every single morning. And it's for the reason that I do it is mainly to acknowledge the staff. Like, I'm not in the shops every day baking now, and they're carrying on my good work. And it's really important for me to acknowledge that every day they're making me proud. And for example, like I'm in Sydney at the moment, so I will walk into the Castlereagh store every day to say hello to the staff. And then when I'm in Brisbane, I try to drop into the stores up there too. And I think I do have this moment though, where even though it wasn't planned, it's so lovely to watch the customers engaging with this space that we've created for them.
Do the customers know who you are?
Some do.
Right.
I do like being a bit undercover boss.
Yeah.
I think maybe for their sake more than mine. I think it can sometimes it can be very uncomfortable for me when someone knows that I'm watching them eat a croissant. I'd prefer for them not to know.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I invite a friend down to Lune for the first time and they've never had a Lune croissant, there's always this real moment of anxiety, like, what if they don't like it, but they just pretend because I'm here? I think it's so much nicer sometimes just to enjoy something without the distraction or the anxiety that someone's watching you. So
let's start enjoying your food memories, because that's what you came for. Your first one, this is a very telling memory for me. It's crepes with lemon juice and sugar. Tell me about this one.
This one is all about my beautiful dad. So I think credit where credit is due. From the moment I can remember, Mum has cooked every single meal I've ever eaten in the family home. She is a beautiful cook. She really puts herself down. I don't think she's good, but she puts love into her cooking. And every time we sit at the family table, it's a meal that she's prepared. My dad is the biggest francophile I've ever met, and the only things he's mastered how to make are profiteroles and crepes, and by God are they good. Anyway, when I was a kid growing up, Dad's crepes or pancakes were kind of known far and wide for how good they were. And there's that, I think it might be the second Tuesday in February is Pancake Tuesday. I believe it's a kickback to a religious celebration somehow linked to Lent. I actually don't know the origins of it. All I know is that every second Tuesday of February, Mum and Dad would invite all of their family friends over. So maybe there was 50 or 60 people in the house. And Dad would cook hundreds of crepes for all the family friends. But my brother Cam and I would always get the first ones, and it felt like this real honour. And Cam liked to have his with jam. I think it was probably raspberry jam and whipped cream. But I would love it sprinkled with caster sugar and then drizzled with lemon juice and rolled up. And thinking about those crepes takes me back to really balmy daylight savings evenings after school. Cam and I sitting on the trampoline in our back garden eating the first crepes out of the pan, watching mum and dad's friends trickle in, and the house just be filled with the smell of like frying butter and happy laughter and like community. It's a very, very happy memory for me, and I actually feel like one of Dad's crepes now.
Right now, but so Pancake Tuesday, also known as Shrove Tuesday,
Tuesday, that's right.
Is the beginning of Lent, and I'm thinking that I thought it was a tradition that your Northern Irish Catholic mother would have brought into the family, but it's the beginning of Lent, and the tradition is they use up all the non-fasting foods like the butter, the milk, the eggs. So all that gets used up. So that's what that's about. But do you reckon crepes are better than pancakes? Because there is a difference.
I think it's probably a personal preference, and it probably goes back to, because I think crepes or pancakes are a real childhood thing. Like it's as you said, it's made with very humble ingredients. And I think whether it be your mum or dad, it's probably something that was made in the family home when you were a little kid as a treat. And for me, because it's crepes with my dad, crepes would always be my preference, but I do know people that love pancakes as well.
Does your dad still make them?
He hasn't made one in a long time. And Bob Reid, if you're out there listening, this is maybe a call to arms. We'll be down in half an hour.
Does your father's repetition and focus on crepe making give us a glimpse into your dedication and need for perfection?
Oh, that's a great question.
You came here for them.
I think I would have to say almost no doubt. Dad's also an engineer. Actually, Dad might be one of the most clever people I've ever met in my life. If there's something that needs to be fixed, around the house or with a car, he can almost always figure out how to fix it himself. He's got a very technical brain, and something like fixing a car or perfecting 200 crepes when you've got all the family friends coming over does require a bit of a perfectionist and an obsessive type personality. Yeah, that's a great observation, and I'm very much like my dad in a lot of ways in our personality. I've got a pretty quick temper, but I'm also very, very quick to forgive. I don't like having a beef with someone, and Dad's exactly the same. Whereas Mum, she'll hold a grudge for a little bit longer. It's hard to get back into her good books.
That's the North Irish Catholic, isn't it?
Exactly, probably.
So I'm curious. There's a connection, and I haven't found it myself, but there's a connection between the practice of engineering and cookery.
I think that there's a connection between the practice of engineering and bakery. So I think cooking is far more intuitive. And if you ask this question of anyone you meet from now on, they'll either be really good at cooking or really good at baking. They're quite different skill sets. And if you imagine someone that's good at cooking, for example, like a pasta sauce, maybe a bolognese, it requires patience and adjustment and taste, seasoning, more heat, less heat, time on the stove, time resting. All of these things are very intuitive based on what that person knows they want their end sauce to taste like. Bakery, from the very beginning, you have to follow a pretty rigid set of rules and instructions. You have to weigh out your ingredients perfectly. You have to incorporate them correctly in exactly the same way every single time in order to get the same product at the end. So I think bakery requires that precise mind and that ability to focus on a procedure. It's far more technical.
Just thinking about your pastries at Lune, there are cooking elements as well as baking elements.
Yes.
Aren't there? So where does the crossover happen? Where do they marry each other, these two? Because I'm thinking about those beautiful fillings and the jams that you make.
So that's actually a great question. And you're absolutely right on the different fillings that we make, which still have to be a bit more prescriptive than cookery, for example. But no one's actually asked this before either. A lot of our chefs at Lune aren't necessarily pastry chefs. Many of them come from a cuisine and restaurant background,
right,
and maybe they want to hone their pastry skills, but it does mean that they bring with them more of that cookery side, and we're so lucky because it means...
To your benefit, to the product's benefit, to the customer,
to everyone's benefit.
Yeah.
And it also means that they bring in a completely new perspective and different ideas, which is why we end up with such brilliant, wonderful new creations on our counter.
You said that the Lune lemon curd croissant sends you back to the memory of these lemon crepes.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's obvious with the flavour, like that tart sweetness of the lemon curd matching the tart of the sugar with the lemon juice on the crepe. But there's also that almost, that beautiful magic that happens when you combine, flour, milk, eggs and butter correctly and then fry it in butter. It's obviously a different textural experience, but when you combine a buttery pancake with lemon and sugar, or it be croissant pastry rolled in a lemon-infused sugar and filled with the lemon curd. I'm actually salivating right. Are you hungry?
Did you pack it in your bag?
I wish I'd had time.
It's interesting because as you talk about it, I am back in that house. I can smell the butter frying on the fry pan. It's a balmy night in Melbourne, and there are these people, in the late 80s just coming in and out of home. So I'm there with them.
Isn't it magical how transportative food memories can be? It's not just reminding you of the flavour of something, it can transport you back to a different time in your life, a different country, a different group of friends. It's magical.
Are there any other Lune pastries built on childhood memories?
So back in 2022, one of the things that we decided as a leadership team at Lune was to create something called a product philosophy. And this is a real insight into how the business runs now and the level at which we think about everything in our business. By this stage we had stores in Melbourne and Brisbane, and we had chefs across 2 states and chefs that had ideas and they wanted to create and bring new ideas to the menu. And so we decided that, similar to Formula One with the FIA regulations, we needed to create the FIA regulations of Lune. So we created a product philosophy and we published it as a hardcover book, and it exists in all stores around the country. And it's actually a set of guidelines that tells the chefs, if they want to create a Lune pastry, the process that they need to follow. And one of the first things we talk about is what is inspiration for a Lune pastry. And the biggest one is nostalgia. And it's so fabulous. One of the pastries that hit our counter, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago now, it started as inspiration. I think it was called a pan de coco, which is a classic Filipino baked treat, which is more like a brioche dough that incorporates coconut in it. And one of our beautiful Filipino chefs said it reminded her of her childhood, and she wanted to create a Lune pastry that celebrated her childhood. And what it ended up with was a quinaman of the original shape, where there's a filling in the middle and the corners.
That's a very unique ingredient, isn't it, the quinaman?
Very.
And it only comes from an area I know this because I was reading about it a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
What is this ingredient?
Well, it's salted butter.
Yeah.
So it comes from Brittany, which is the neighbouring region on the north coast of France to Normandy.
Yeah.
It's a fun story, actually. The quinaman is older than the croissant. And Brittany wasn't as wealthy as Normandy in the way regions go, but both had beautiful pastures for dairy. But because Normandy was wealthy, they could sell their butter locally and keep prices high. But in Brittany, they had to add salt to their butter so they could export it, and the salt preserved the butter. Now in Brittany, if the mother at home was preparing the dinner and she didn't have anything for dessert, she would use the leftover bread dough, roll it out and laminate it with the salted butter and sugar, and then bake it in a pie dish. And that's the origin of a quinaman. So at Lune now we make quinaman from croissant pastry, which is even more decadent. But yeah, you're right. The secret ingredient is the salted butter, and it gives it because it caramelizes in the oven, it has that sweet bitterness, but then this hint of savouriness that comes through from the salt. I have to drink. I'm so hungry right now. Stop talking about your own pastries, Kate. Oh my God.
Well, we can change it. Let's change the subject. So we've wrapped that one up. Yes, there are nostalgic food memories in a Lune pastry. So what I want to do now, Kate, is I want to explore the relationship you have with your body. You know better than most what it takes for a perfectly tuned machine to perform at its peak. And there is no greater machine than the human body. Tell me about the time in your life between, or at the moment, you realised the reality of your Formula One career was not aligned with your expectation.
Great question.
You keep saying that.
I know, but they are all great questions, and the way that you're framing them is so beautiful. To cut a long story short, I dreamt about Formula One and working in it from a very young age. And I think even from spending this short amount of time together, I think you can see that I've got a very active imagination. I also dream big, you know, shooting for the moon and all that. And with Formula One...
My God, the hairs on my whole body is
I
just...
saw that.
Keep going.
How can I after that? My goodness. So I think for me, I'd built up in my mind a very vivid picture of what a career in Formula One would look like. And chances that the reality was going to match that were probably pretty slim. But in year 10 at school, when you go and do your week of work experience, you can't go to a Formula One team to do work experience. They don't allow that.
Go to the Ford dealership?
Yeah, you go. Do you know what? In my case, I actually went to the Radio for the Blind, ironically. But no, you can't go and do a week working in an F1 team to see what it might be like. So for me, I guess the closer I got to it and the more that I did to make the dream a reality, the bigger that expectation got. And then when I finally did achieve the dream and was offered my dream job with the Williams Formula One team as an aerodynamicist, the reality falling so far below what that huge expectation was that I'd built up. And I do think it's really important to articulate at this point that it was very long hours, but I'm not scared of working hard. For me, it was the actual satisfaction in those long hours and the work that I was doing. It wasn't giving me what I needed. And I was very unwilling to let go of not only a dream, but it was something that I'd begun to completely define myself by. Like Formula One was my identity. So if I left that behind to try something else, I was leaving behind my entire identity and what defined me. And for my entire life, that had defined me. So who are you when you are not the thing you think you are?
I'm thinking about what you said of Lune earlier, that it doesn't define you.
It's really important that it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that's really crucial. None of us are one thing. We are all many, many things, and we should be celebrating and honouring all the things that we are. And yes, Lune is a big part of me now, but Formula One was my whole. And
until it wasn't.
Well, I wasn't willing to let go of it, so I pushed on. But in the end, a beautiful friend says this to me very often: the body keeps the score. And I think our mind is part of our body as well. And in that view, the mind kept the score for me, and it started to do what I should have walked away from Formula One earlier than I did. But because I didn't, my body probably started to reject the decisions that I was making, and in that make its own decisions. And the way it did that was it tried to regain control in the small ways that it could. I was not living in the country that I wanted, not living around my friends and family. I wasn't in a job that I wanted to be in, but I was in denial about all of that.
So are you saying that the body and the mind disconnected?
No, I think I'm saying that sometimes, like I've been asked this question many, many times, and the way you're asking the questions is making me think in a new way. I was actually having this conversation with M on the way here, where sometimes a question that's asked is almost impossible for me to answer in the moment because it requires me to analyse it and understand it before I can articulate it correctly.
You need to sit in it first.
And I think that question that you asked just then, I think it was my mind and body. Like I was moving through life doing the things that I thought that I wanted to be doing, but maybe it was my mind disconnecting from my body. And my mind decided that I was not doing the right things and it was going to take control.
Yeah.
And so it took control of my eating and my exercise because it could control those two things.
So from your own experience, what did or what does living with an eating disorder feel like?
When you are in the depths of it or after? Okay, let's start with in the depths. You become an incredibly insular person, and I think all you can think about is the things that you can control, because it's giving you a false semblance of the idea that you have control, but you don't. It's like you're controlling what you're eating and you're controlling how much you're exercising, but in a funny way, controlling those two things is almost making you spin out of control. You can only think about food, because like in the case of anorexia, you are starving your body, and every part of your body that requires nutrients to operate in its peak as a machine needs fuel to do that. So every part of your body is sending signals to your brain, eat, please fuel me. And so all you can think about is food, which is torture, because it's the one thing you're actively trying not to do, to eat. So in a way, and this is where we were trying to go, you try to live vicariously through food in every single way you possibly can. And similar to me having that dream of working in Formula One and that fully defining me and being my identity, I tried to figure out how I could be around Formula One or thinking about Formula One every single moment of the day. And the eating disorder became me trying to be around food and thinking about food every single moment of the day without eating it. So I started baking. And I think a lot of people think it's ironic, but anyone who's been through an eating disorder understands that need to be around food because you're thinking about it. So when you're engaging with it, even if you're not eating it, you're getting some sort of fulfillment and almost sating that hunger vicariously.
Because any form of addiction or disorder is born from a deep sense of disconnection.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So, disconnection from ourselves, from others.
From our lives, from
purpose.
our purpose.
Oh,
Snap.
Another aspect about you is your relationship with purpose, obsession, control, and focus. A push and pull, much like the moon's relationship with the tide, the ebb and the flow.
Can I tell you something that it's only become a new thing? I've started meditating at night to try and get myself to sleep. And I do a lot of breathing meditation. And speaking about the tides, there's a lot of beautiful breathing techniques out there, but I've developed my own where if I'm listening to very calming music and I'm deep breathing, I imagine the tide being this like rush of water coming in that comes into my mind. And then when it goes back to the ocean, it's like sweeping all the thoughts out. And it's very calming. It feels like it's like cleansing your mind and taking all the busy thoughts away. And most nights, that's what gets me to sleep, which is, it's an aside, but you reminded me of it when you said about how the moon controls the tides.
So is this newfound meditation a way you navigate balance now?
It's a way I'm navigating an incredibly chaotic time in my life. I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm not only running with my business partners a business of nearly 300 staff, I've written a book, I'm on a book tour, I've got speaking engagements and all of these things going on.
The chaos is much different now though, isn't it?
The chaos is much different. It's rather than being a singular focus, it's coming from many directions.
So just an aside, speaking of relationships, all this croissanterie, is there any time for a datery? Is there a +1 moon walking? Is there a +1 moon walking in orbit with you?
Oh, it's very sad to say that I'm currently the Neil Armstrong of the dating world and I'm the only one on the moon.
That will change. That will change.
Do it's really critical to say, for me, it's a choice at the moment.
Yeah.
I'd love to be in a relationship, but it's got to be the right person. I won't settle for the wrong person just to be in a relationship, and so far the right person hasn't come along, and they have to be pretty spectacular. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe like the Buzz Aldrin to my Neil Armstrong.
Oh, guys, I love that.
I don't know about that. That's a bad analogy. He didn't go on the moon. You just stay in the lunar module, mate.
Your second memory. This will be for many of us listening here in Australia. It's the Baker's Delight custard scroll.
Oh, make me more hungry. How good is the Baker's Delight custard scroll?
You tell us.
It's like perfect white bread, like the white bread of our childhoods. You know, all Australian kids would have been brought up on probably tip-top sandwiches or, you know, toast with Vegemite. It's that beautiful white bread rippled with that perfect vanilla-y bakery creme patissiere that's riddled through it, and then topped with a slab of coconut whip icing. Like, tell me you don't want that now. And like mum and being Irish, would cut it in half and slather it with butter.
So would I.
Do you know, actually, we're in Sydney at the moment, and my favourite baked good in Sydney is the finger bun
at Humble.
Snap again. And I love that because that takes me back to this memory. It's full nostalgic
I see it
childhood
every
memory.
morning after Pilates. Humble is just right on my walk home.
That is so dangerous.
It's
not for you, obviously. It would be for me. I would have it every day if I walked past it every day. So good. Shout out to Humble.
So you would have these scrolls with Dad at the racetrack?
Yes. So, I mean, this beautiful memory of Formula One with my father. We would go to the Australian Grand Prix every year for the 4 days, and I mean, there's incredible food offerings at the AusGP now, one of them being a Lune stand, which I'm incredibly proud of. But back then there was like the hot chips, the beer, and the Peters Magnums. Peters or Streets? I think it's Peters. Whatever, the ice cream stand. And so Dad and I would come with a cut lunch. And for morning tea, we would always go to Baker's Delight and get the custard scroll, and then we'd have our sandwich made up for us, and then we would have an ice cream in the afternoon. But there was that magical moment where, you know, it was maybe between races on circuit. Dad would pull out the big thermos of hot water. He'd have a coffee, I'd have a tea, and we'd have our custard scrolls. And sitting trackside with my dad at my favourite event of the year, watching maybe the Formula Fords or the Formula Vs or the celebrity race, which they don't do anymore, I think to the disservice of the Grand Prix. It was always very funny. But just having, it's again, food becoming part of a social situation and a memory. And yeah, I can't even imagine my childhood without those moments.
Why was the custard scroll the best for trackside? Why did that jump out at you?
I mean, probably any of the baked goods at Baker's Delight would have worked, but I think it's clear that I've got a thing for custard, butter and coconut icing, so that was my choice.
I had a bit of a route around the Baker's Delight story. You know, it started in Melbourne in 1988 and now has over 700 stores worldwide. I'm going to be really bold. Can you see the Lune DNA ever getting that big?
No.
Why?
And purposely. So I think bakery is different to Lune. As you said, we've really tried to create a whole experience around the croissant. And I think there's something special about walking into, for example, the Rosebery store in Sydney, where there's the beautiful climate-controlled glass cube in the centre with up to 5 or 6 pastry chefs working in that space just on the raw pastry. Lune is a very, very expensive business to run. I think a lot of people see the lines out the door and think they must be raking it in. Like, our wage bill alone is enormous to bring that experience.
So many hands on the product.
Exactly. And I think, like, we don't like to call ourselves this, but we are like the luxury version of the bakery world. And if you're going to compare the luxury bakery to the fashion world, there's not a Gucci on every corner or a Chanel on every corner. They're an experience, and there's something that you walk into the store and you feel like you're having a moment and it's special, and that you look forward to it. And if we were to, and I'm not saying that walking into a Baker's Delight isn't special, because I've just sat here and spent 5 minutes talking about their custard scroll, and still to this day, for like 3 months straight, every day I will have their hot cross buns because I think they're the best. But for Lune, it's really like a premium experience that we don't want to become like one on every corner.
I watched rather the Australian Story episode about you, all consuming. It gave us a open window into your family. Mother June comes across as a strong as an Irish oak. She's keeping everyone together. Your father Bob is a perceptive fella. He traces back your childhood asthma, as he says, your fight for air with your need for control. You spent a lot of time in hospital in early childhood. What happened?
So I was 18 months old when I was diagnosed with asthma, and I think, a lot is known about the illness now, and it's, the treatments are great for it. People understand how serious and severe it can be. But we're going back 40 years ago, and when I was diagnosed, the doctors first thought that it was bronchitis, and then they ummed and ahed about a bunch of things, and finally a doctor said, I think it might be asthma, and he'd hit the nail on the head. But because a lot wasn't known about it, Mum and Dad had this daughter that Mum had wished for like her entire life, and in particular 10 years of her marriage. And at that time, that was quite a long time to be married before your first child came along. And then when your one child, who's your miracle, is struggling to breathe, and the doctors didn't really know what it was, and then certainly other parents didn't know or respect the seriousness of the illness, I think it probably started to define Mum and Dad's lives, being on watch for me at all times to keep me alive.
Do you think you were aware? I mean, you were only a wee little thing. Were you aware of that behaviour in them, do you think? Were you picking up on that stuff?
I mean, I can't, from an 18-month-old, I can't, from a conscious perspective, relay that. I certainly have, when you start earning memories or like having them, I have memories of, I'd call it my pump, which was the plastic mask attached to the nebulizer. I mean, I have so many memories of like needing 4-hourly pumps when I was really bad, so 6 of them throughout the day, which Mum and Dad were just on duty doing them. I absolutely understood that when I was too young to administer medicine, I relied deeply on my parents to be the ones to do that for me. And I have absolutely no doubt that fostered a very, very strong bond between them and I at a young age.
Are you still affected by asthma?
Not really. I think the severity of it lasted for maybe 7 years. And I think that there is this belief that asthma goes in 7-year cycles. But if I get a very bad cold or the pollens are bad, sometimes it can trigger the raspiness that comes from asthma. But I would say that no, I'm on the whole not really affected anymore.
In the Australian Story, I found a harsh edit, a really hard cut on a sentence. And it's where you say, it was none of their business. You're referring to your mum and dad. Do you remember that bit?
Yes, but that was related to my anorexia.
To your anorexia?
Yeah.
What was that about? What was none of their business? Because I'm thinking, as a parent myself, I've spent, my whole life keeping this young person alive. What was your expression in that about the anorexia?
I love the fact that you noticed that, because in the book, the whole section in the book that speaks to the eating disorder and that period of my life, I think I wrote it in that tone because my editor really encouraged me to embrace the person that I was at that time in my life, to pull the reader back into that moment in my life.
Because that's what that sentence did on the show.
Yes.
On the episode.
And I think it was very cleverly edited.
Yeah. But it was
harsh.
Yeah.
And it sounded harsh.
Yeah.
But when I spoke before about what an eating disorder does to you, and it makes you insular and selfish, you cease to understand how what you are doing and your actions, how they affect the people around you. And when I was, and like this is that sentence, it was none of their business. That is the anorexia speaking. That isn't Kate the person speaking. And I think it was very cleverly put into the show, because when I was really sick, the anorexic voice in my head did say,
because we heard it then,
it's none of their business what I'm doing. It's my body and it's my choices.
The standout character in for me in the episode was your brother Cam.
Really?
Yeah.
Love that.
His role to help you recover was really, he was steadfast. I really found him steadfast because he says something within the interview where he says, I knew what Kate had. I knew what we had to do to get it better, but I was just going to get on with it and treat her like my sister or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing there.
I'm going to be raw here for a moment. Cam wasn't living in Melbourne for the majority of my recovery. He was living up in Sydney. He'd started a business up here and was being very successful. He didn't live in the minutiae and the detail of my recovery. So his responses to that, I think had he been living in the house with mum and dad and I actually think his reaction would be quite different. But in the few instances that he came down to Melbourne to visit while I was recovering, it's absolutely accurate that, and I do love this, he chose to treat me just as his sister, as he always had, and not acknowledge the eating disorder which had consumed my personality. And that was crucial. And I think a parent couldn't do that because of the parent-child relationship, but a sibling can. And like a sibling relationship is so unique because like Cam and I knew each other from the moment he was born. And you don't have to prove yourself to a sibling. You don't have to convince them to be in your life because by default they are. You are probably the most honest version of yourself around a sibling. And the fact that Cam consciously and actively chose on the times that he did visit to not pander to the eating disorder was a very true reflection of our close sibling relationship. And then when he did join me at Lune, I guess in that tail end of my getting myself back to a healthy weight, he carried on a daily basis on that way. So, yeah.
Sadly, there'll come a day when our parents won't be here. I know, right? Straight in for another.
Way to hit me in the hardest spot, my God.
And your parents won't be around. I'm curious, if someone were to ask you when they're not here, how would you describe them to someone?
I don't think there are enough words in the English language to describe them. At times they've been my sole carers and guardian. They've been the people that have saved me. They've kept me alive. They've believed in me, supported me, given me all the resources and the love to live whatever life I've wanted to live. I think going back to Formula One, I thought that by admitting that Formula One hadn't been the dream that I'd hoped, I would let my dad down. And I think that was probably part of that led into the depression and the eating disorder. I didn't want to disappoint him. But going through all of it, I've just learned that all they've ever wanted is for me to be happy, no matter what. And I went from being an aerodynamicist in a Formula One team to working as a counterhand at a bakery. And that didn't change how mum and dad felt about me. They just loved me through all of it. I feel like the luckiest girl on the planet to be their daughter.
You won the parent lottery.
I did. I won the parent lottery. I really did. Yeah.
Let's go to your third food memory now.
Woo!
Lucky last.
Gin. Please.
Having your first ever Parisian croissant.
Oh, that's ending on a high note, isn't it?
When you actually appreciated what it was like to eat again.
Yeah. So this didn't happen at the boulangerie that I ended up training at. I think a lot of people would assume that it did. But I'd booked myself this ticket to Paris. My two friends, Mary and Al, spontaneously decided to come with me. And the very first morning that the three of us woke up in Paris, we went to the 5th arrondissement, which is one of the oldest quarters in Paris. And we went to one of those open air street markets where, you know, you're on a pedestrianised street, but all of the food shops and produce, like the fromagerie, the bakery, the boulangerie, they all have counters that open out onto the street. And we were all starving, you know, like not hungover, we were jet lagged. And we all had it in our sights that we wanted a croissant. So we went to, I think it was the Boulangerie Mouffetard, whatever, the pronunciation was probably awful. And we were presented with this spectacular counter of beautiful baked goods. And we all ordered a croissant, and it was given to us each in a little paper bag. And I remember we walked over to one of those high cocktail tables that was placed out onto the street and stood there. And I opened the bag, and I remember I can place myself back in the moment being hit with the smell of French butter. And for me, that was maybe the first time I'd ever experienced with a knowing mind that I'd never experienced a croissant like this before. Like it as much as I love Baker's Delight, their croissants were not this French butter croissant. And for me, it was that moment where I thought, a croissant really is a celebration of the butter that it's made with, and this one is a grand celebration. So next, I kind of looked at the croissant, and for the first time really beholding this pastry, I could see the perfectly defined layers. And it was like an architectural work of art. And then you get to eat it, which is, I guess it's that moment of, you've been building up and waiting to this moment, and finally you get to sink your teeth into this warm pastry that you could already smell the butter of before your mouth was anywhere near it. And when you bit into it, the shell of the pastry shattered and gave way to warm, slightly tacky, soft layers of butter-enriched dough, and also a little whiff of buttery steam coming out. And it was truly a life-changing moment.
Was it like, when you speak of a life-changing moment, was it this is what I've been looking for to get me to the next bit? Was it an epiphany?
No, that one wasn't an epiphany. The epiphany really happened when I did go to visit the boulangerie 6 days later,
right,
where I'd seen a photo which had spurred my trip to Paris.
Right.
But I really wanted to articulate that particular croissant as my third food memory because it was such a seminal moment. It's the best first pastry I've ever eaten. And if that hadn't been, if it hadn't been such an important one, I wouldn't have remembered it. I would have remembered my experience at Du Pain et Décidé as that memory. But this croissant was so good. And it's funny, now I have moments where sometimes I bite into a Lune croissant and I'm taken back to that moment rather than my first time at Du Pain, because it's the first time you experience something that's so, like, it's all consuming of the senses. And I mean, it's like when I take a bite into a lemon curd cruffin and I'm transported back to the crepes with the lemon and sugar. For me, when I bite into a croissant, I'm taken back to that moment, and that's why that's my food memory.
Mary and Al are incredibly important people in your life.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Who are they?
So when I was in the depths of the eating disorder, for God knows what reason, Mary decided to give me a job working at her perfect little cafe, which was very close to Mum and Dad's house. And it was a place that I frequented every day for my coffee. I'd built up the courage to ask her if she would hire me to work. I had no experience baking things in a professional capacity. I was baking a lot at home. But for some reason, Mary said, yes, you can come and work here 4 hours every day and do the muffins and help with the cakes and a bit of the prep work, and then you can go home at 10:30 in the morning. And Mary is an incredibly intuitive, compassionate person who innately understood somehow, like she's just one of these superhuman people. She somehow understood exactly what I needed in that moment and gave me the support and the space and the surrounding to start to feel okay being around food again. And I know I write about it in the book, and I love this passage. She taught me so much more than baking and prep in a kitchen. Like, she taught me how to feel safe around food again. She taught me how to laugh and be silly. Like, one of the things that I was worried about Dad being disappointed in me leaving a career in F1 behind. But actually, one of the things that hurt the most was Dad would say to me, you used to be so funny, you've lost your sense of humour. And working at Mary and Al's cafe we were silly and we made jokes and we poked fun of each other and we had fun. And it had been a long time since I'd worked in a business or an environment that was fun. And like, fun's so important. Like, laughter, surely the serotonin created in like laughing and smiling and enjoying people's company makes life one of the reasons it's worth living.
So if the cornerstone of a good croissant is the butter, then a cornerstone of a good life is laughter.
Yeah, I love that. I'm on tour with my friend Em at the moment, and we're just laughing constantly, and it's like, it's a good abs workout. You always feel so good after a good laugh. I think we underestimate the importance of lightness and humour in our lives. It should be celebrated more often.
You've chosen the Seeing Eye Dogs of Australia as your social cause. What do they do?
So the Seeing Eye Dogs breed and train dogs for people with vision impairment. I'd like to explain why they're so important to me. When Cam and I first moved Lune from our little Bayside bakery to Fitzroy, which is now the flagship store in Melbourne, we had this huge, vast space. And every single day, a local woman would come into Lune with a little black Seeing Eye Dog puppy with its little yellow and blue jacket on. And she was, it was the cutest thing you've ever seen. And so in my chef's whites, I'd go outside of the Cube, which is our raw pastry kitchen, and ask if I could pat the dogs. And initially she explained to me that when they've got their jacket on, you can't pat them.
Yes.
But I got to know her so well that when she saw me coming out to say hello, she'd take the jacket off so I could say hello to the puppy. And for me, seeing all the effort that she was putting into the training of these dogs made me start to think about how much love she was putting into the training of a dog that would then give someone with vision impairment eyes to live. And I started noticing Seeing Eye Dogs all around Melbourne and just having such an appreciation for, they are the eyes of someone that can't see, and they allow people to go out into the world and live rich lives, but also have these incredible companions in their lives. And I would love to train Seeing Eye Dog puppies, but my life is far too busy to dedicate the time required. So 8 years ago, knowing that I couldn't dedicate my time to training Seeing Eye Dogs, but needing black Labradors in my life, I went and got a little black Labrador puppy of my own, who is now, she's like my right-hand woman. We're best friends. I adore her. She's the love of my life. And I mean, she's not a Seeing Eye Dog, but it through her, I just, every time I have a cause to support, it's really throwing my energy behind the Seeing Eye Dogs, because I think as an organisation, they're absolutely brilliant.
seeingeyedogs.visionaustralia.org. Head to the website to find out ways you can donate money or sponsor a puppy. We have an MFK Fisher Serve It Forth tradition here at TFM. MFK Fisher was an American 20th century food writer. And so this tradition here is our previous guest presents you with a dish. Now, our previous guest, you can't write this, Kate, was Belgian artist Sophie Muller. And she serves you silky, rich, perfectly balanced Belgian chocolate. She actually didn't know who you were when I told her, when I asked this question.
I'll have it. Wow. Oh my gosh.
She wants to serve it to you as it is in its most perfect condition. How do you feel about that?
So is that a set or is it a melted? Just set, just a bar of perfect.
For her, I think it would come as a bar.
That sounds like heaven. I think, where is it?
I know we're all hungry right now, aren't
tell
we?
Tell me it exists.
It doesn't exist, but we've got it.
Gosh.
Now, what would you...
Thank you, Sophie.
What would you like to pass forward to our next guest?
I think, having talked about my food memories, I'd really love the next guest to experience one of my dad's perfect out-of-the-pan crepes, drenched with lemon juice and caster sugar, rolled up, sitting on the trampoline in my backyard in Glen Iris in 1989. Can you make all of that happen?
We can make all of that happen.
Great, thank you. And you're welcome.
Our next guest is trans actor Zoe Tarakis.
I have no doubt they're going to love it.
Now, this is your opportunity, to ask me a question. What would you like to know, Kate?
What is your version of shooting for the moon?
Listening to you just now speak, I know it sounds really cliche, but if you go back to the very beginning of our conversation, when I got electrocuted. It was literally 240 volts ran through my body, because at that point, listening to your stories, following your journey, seeing what you had created, and just for every black there was a white, and if there was more white if there was more black, we found more white, and the possibility and what is possible, that is my moon, and it just brings it all closer. And not only just for me, for everybody. And I think that's why I do this show.
I think I've been interviewed many times over the years, and I think I'm always in awe of interviewers, because it's really hard to create a space for someone to feel very comfortable to share new things in a new and authentic way. And you've absolutely nailed it today.
I hope so.
I'd like to leave you with an amusing thought, because laughter's important. A woman sent me a photo on Instagram last week, and she's a ceramicist, and she's been following me for a long time, and she'd created a beautiful bowl with an inscription on the inside. And you know that, what is it, shoot for the moon, because if you miss, at least you'll land amongst the stars. Her inscription was, shoot for the moon. Can I just remind you now that the diameter of the moon is about 3,000 kilometres, so if you missed, what the fuck did you do wrong?
Kate, you've perfected the croissant with accolades to the moon and back. Have you perfected yourself in the process?
Absolutely not. And I think 23-year-old Kate embarking on a career in Formula One thought she was going to perfect herself. And 43-year-old Kate knows that will never happen. But the journey of life and having perfection as a goal, knowing it will never be achieved, but I will continue to evolve and grow in the ways that I'm meant to, is actually the really great part. And I'm completely fine with that.
I'm so thrilled to have you with us today and doing the thing you do with butter and flour and not fucking green juice. Thank you so much, Kate REID, Miss Lune.
Thank you so much for having me. That was so much fun.
It was, wasn't it?
It was amazing.
That's it for this episode of 3 Food Memories.